So if you're saying that something implies something else, you're making an argument. And so, what I'm
I think
saying is,
so isn't it something like the modus ponens is if John Stewart being funny depends on attitudes, and attitudes can vary, then then we can't say that in all possible worlds John Stewart would be funny. Isn't that a valid?
Sure. So we could just make the more simpler modal claim that John Stewart being funny is a contingent truth, a contingent subjective truth.
Okay.
So we could say that.
And it's contingent on what?
Look, in the action world, in the actual world, there are people that think John Stewart is funny.
Yeah,
okay?
Let's not get distracted though. So it's let's go break it down. So it's because I want to see where the problem is. It's contingent.
I'm trying to break it down. I'm trying to break down the modal semantics of it. Okay. So if we say that in the actual world,
yeah,
find John Stewart funny, and we're saying that funniness is a subjective property. So again, that's a claim that we'd have to argue for.
Yep.
But if we say, but you're saying given truth, in the actual world, John Stewart is funny. But in some possible world, so some world that's not the actual world, in that world, no one thinks John Stewart is funny. Or not very many people think John Stewart is funny. In that world, it wouldn't be true that John Stewart is funny. Because again, in that world, if the funniness, John Stewart's funniness, depends on people's attitudes or responses, in that possible world, people think that John Stewart's funny. That's why in that world, it's not true that he's funny. So we would say that John Stewart being funny is a contingent truth. Whereas the interior angles of a triangle being 180 degrees, that's a necessary truth. So in all those possible worlds,
I'm not sure what you're trying to clarify. I think we're agreeing it's contingent. And what is it contingent on? We're saying attitudes of humans, right?
So you're using the word. So I'm using the word contingent in a modal sense, and you're using the word contingent synonymously with dependent.
Sure. So
that's where the confusion is. So if I say that a contingent subjective truth, I'm saying that the truth is subjective in the sense that it depends on the attitudes or responses of the persons.
Yeah, I understand. So yeah. I'll clarify the language. So it's a contingent truth. And what is the truth dependent on? Meaning, what do we see to be the cause of
the attitudes or responses of observers?
Yes, and those attitudes are variable, right? We believe they're not necessary. We clearly think that in all possible worlds, we don't have to have the same attitudes.
Correct.
And that's what you mean. That's how you're defining subjective, right?
Subjective. So there's truths and there's properties. So a subjective truth is one whose truth value depends on the attitudes or responses of observer. A subjective property is a property that depends on the attitudes or responses of observers.
Okay. So are there
That's how the semantics of it works.
Okay. I think I understand your language, so that'll be helpful. So are there any moral truths that are neither analytic, meaning not analytical truths, not moral analytical truths, meaning
substantive moral truths, yes.
Yeah, and by substantive, I think it needs to be more than terms like agony and pain, because I think agony and pain are defined in virtue of our attitudes, right?
Yeah, he's gonna say.
Well, obviously, our experiences of things like pain are, our attitudes are part of that. Obviously, if we weren't in some state that we intensely disliked, then we wouldn't be in pain.
Okay, so what I'm trying to avoid is calling those substantive claims like something.
He'll sign on to things like rape, torture.
Okay.
Yeah, so something like cruelty is wrong.
Okay, good. So the question is, do you think that there is a claim like that would be the case, even if our attitudes meaning they're independent of our attitude. So even if everyone's attitude towards those
Yeah,
claims,
they're not response dependent.
so in virtue of what are they? Like, how do we, why are they true?
Why are they true? They're necessary.
Meaning, why is it true that if everyone wanted rape to exist, or I'm trying to think of an example though, Jack, where there isn't like an analytical confusion, but we'll say rape for now, right? Let's say everyone agreed that we'd prefer our society to allow for rape, even if no one wants to be raped themselves, let's say. But we want our society to allow for it, and we prefer it, and we think that we're more satisfied given rape existing in our society.
Yes.
So what would actually, calm yourself down, Josh. What would be your reasoning for saying, well, now what's the criteria to actually say, well, we have some criteria that lets us know that this is a truth? I mean, I know how we verify other types of truth. I'm not sure I understand how we would verify that type of truth, or even believe in that type of truth.
Well, I don't think I understand your question. I feel like so.
So what would be what?
Let me give. So why don't I just give you an example of an irreducibly normative truth?
Oh,
Why don't we just start there?
We've already cited some that you've signed on to. But the question is, I think Yaneve is trying to understand what are the truth makers for claims like that.
So I don't think there are truth makers for these sorts of claims, just like mathematical or logical or modal claims. You don't need some sort of truth maker in the sense of having to correspond to some part of reality. So if I say that 2 + 2 = 4 in all possible worlds, mean something about merely about the actual world, I'm saying that about all possible worlds.
Well, you're talking
that
about
truth wouldn't be part of reality. It's not made true by how it corresponds to some part of reality.
You're talking about a different kind of necessity there, though, right? Because it's you're just talking about what people refer to as metaphysical necessity in the case of moral truths, right? Because there isn't actually
normative truths, yeah. So
right, so there isn't any contradiction.
Reason.
Right, so the idea is that in mathematical truths, if you denied them, that would entail a contradiction, but that's not going to be true in the case of moral truths, right?
Exactly. So all those other types of claims you mentioned, right? We can see contradictions and they reveal themselves to us in the world even, right? Meaning it's hard to have progress with faulty logic.
Sure.
The exception of iron. Right. So I don't see that methodology and how we would use it in this realm. And I don't see what criteria we would use to show someone that this doesn't fall in the same category as what you were calling aesthetic truths. I don't see, I mean, it seems like you're just making a decision about what to call subjective versus objective, but I don't see the foundation for which you sort of make that decision other than your own interpretation.
So let me give an example. So let's imagine some argument and has true premises such that its conclusion must be true. So that's a modal claim. So I'm saying that some argument is valid such that in every possible world, its conclusion is true. Okay. So the normative claim, we all have decisive reasons to accept this conclusion. Do you agree?
Again, for me to believe that an argument is of that nature, right? You know, the types of things that I believe that about.
Now you're getting distracted.
No. I think quite the opposite here. We're clarifying because I think you're pointing out something that you wouldn't need to point out if you notice the pattern of the argument, right? We're not questioning whether there are.
You should address the question that I just asked. So you know that the argument is valid, and you know that it has true premises.
I agree that there are logical claims of that nature that exist.
Okay. And so then would you also agree that we all have decisive reasons to accept the conclusions of our valid arguments with true premises such that the conclusion must follow?
This has nothing to do with
Those facts give us decisive reasons or count in favor of us accepting that conclusion.
So I'd have to think about what that language means, right? So again, it's not like if someone gave me a logical truth, I'd have a decisive reason to believe it, right? If you came and said X is logically true, it's not like I would have a decisive reason to believe it. Right? There's some criteria for which I come to
yeah, because you're already changing the scenario. So the scenario is there's an argument. There is some argument, and this argument is valid.
How do I know it's valid?
Premises. No, that doesn't matter.
To know it's valid.
It doesn't matter.
I mean, it matters. It affects what answer I would give you.
No,
right.
It doesn't, because we're making the modal claim. The modal claim is that the argument is valid. We're taking that as true.
Oh, okay. The argument is valid, but are you asking me? Okay.
Yes, the argument.
So yeah, if the argument is valid, we would in parlance.
And it has true premises, and it has true premises. So we're saying that's
sure.
That's the antecedent of the condition.
And then what was your question?
And so I'm saying that those two facts combined, the argument being valid, true premises, such that the conclusion must be true.
Yeah.
Those facts give us decisive reasons, or are decisive reasons, or count in favor of us accepting the conclusion.
I mean, I think that's a sort of pragmatic linguistic thing, right? I think we would say something like, "Hey, do you want an answer, or do you want to ask another question?"
Are you asking me? I'm sorry, I was listening to you.
Oh, I thought you were trying to say something, or maybe someone else was.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, what we would say to someone is that is a methodology by which we sort of do truth making. And so when something fits that pattern, we call it a truth. And therefore we want you to also follow that language about truth. And you should therefore call this claim. Let's call it claim.
See, there you go. There you go. You said the word should.
Yeah, but I don't think
you're using a normative term.
Yeah, but just listen to what I'm saying, right? And that's why I proceeded with this pragmatic stuff, right? So we would say something like, you should accept it because we want you to follow the natures of truth. Now, if someone didn't, there's no real metaphysical should in there, right? If someone said, no, I don't want to follow these types of truths, we'd say, fine, we're just not having a conversation.
That person wouldn't, but they wouldn't be acting irrationally. If such a person
I think we're defining rationally such that we expect someone to follow rational claims. So they would be acting irrationally by our
expect that, but so why have that expectation unless someone is failing to respond to a reason? You can't put that up as a standard.
Why not?
Should follow this, unless you're an objectivist. Unless you're going to with me now say that yes, we all do have decisive reasons to accept this conclusion. That's the irreducibly normative claim. And that claim is not made true by how it corresponds to some reality, any more than how the claim, it's possible that I own a pair of orange socks. That's not made true by how it corresponds to some part of reality. These are our modal intuitions about basic modal truths. And the same goes for our normative.
I'm not really following what you're trying to ask at this point. What's the clarification you're trying to?
So what I've done is I've established the existence of an irreducibly normative truth, one that's very difficult to avoid, and I think I just showed that it's very difficult to avoid, that we would all have decisive reasons. No,
but I think this is getting us off track.
I don't think this is off track at all. I think this is completely on track, because this is showing. This is our theory of epistemic reasons. This is why we say to someone, when we give them evidence and we say, you should believe X because of the evidence.
We were asking you a specific question, which was...
It's not a moral should, right? Like in the case...
No, it's not a moral should. It's an epistemic should. So there's
Okay, so
so
that's-
normativity
but that's-
isn't just moral
I think-
claims.
I think
It's-
maybe we can obviate. I think maybe we can obviate this detour by getting back to the original question.
So now that we've established this epistemic norm, we can then move to the control and regulation of behavior.
Well, let's try to get back to the original question.
What we call
right?
morality.
So, yeah. So Yaneve was asking you, right, about what kind of a claim moral propositions are when the denial of them doesn't entail a contradiction, right? Nor are they subjective claims, right, such as aesthetic claims on your view, right? So he seems to be, what he's asking you is, what is your criterion by which you understand something to belong to this third category, right? Because the one category is that there are truths that are conceptually and logically necessary because their denial entails a contradiction, right? And then there's another category of proposition in which the truth makers are going to be subjective. They're going to be like preferences or attitudes or responses, right? And so you want to say that these claims are neither subjective nor does their denial entail a contradiction, right? And so Yaneve is asking for the criterion for how you decide to class things as being in that category. Is that right, Yaneve? Would you say that's a fair? Yeah. So that's what we're asking.
Yeah, so I just say that they're normative truths. So they're functions of reasons.
Okay, what if someone came to you and said, well, you know, so aesthetics ones are not because they're not function of reasons.
Yes, I've said that a couple times now.
Okay,
So we're not failing. So by thinking that
what
John
would be
Stewart's
your
not funny,
criteria
we're
be
not
to show
failing.
someone that something is a function of reason?
Do what?
How could you prove to me that, you know, some specific act it falls into the category of morality because it's a function of reason, and another act falls into the category of aesthetics because it's not a function. What was your criteria?
He's just saying some are, yeah, he thinks that subjective claims are not reason, are not a function of reason. Whereas,
yeah, function of reason. But the question is why. We'll just have to ask the question why again. So like I tell you, I think, you know, eating feces is morally wrong. Right? Do you think that falls into morality?
Say chocolate ice cream, right? He's going to say chocolate ice cream is just preferring chocolate ice cream is merely something subjective. There's no.
Yeah, I'd like to understand why it's not a function of reason. Why the other thing? How do we know what is a function of reason?
Yeah. So the question is, if somebody were to claim that eating chocolate ice cream, that there was an external normative reason why one should not eat ice cream and not eat chocolate ice cream, and it's not a claim in virtue of there being some kind of harm, you know, like say physical harm or something like that. It's just bad simplicator, right? It's just morally evil simplicator, right? Not in virtue of anything else. Right. What would be the argument to show that that was mistaken?
You would give some sort of argument about how harm was a central moral concept. And so the fact that this...
Well, no, you're saying that you think there are things that are wrong, that are not wrong in virtue of harm, right?
I didn't say that.
But so you think that all...
You see, I have a feeling he's going to fall into the analytical side, where he's going to, all his moral claims are just going to be analytical truths.
Well,
no,
but
my,
I don't think
my moral claims are going to be substantive truths.
But I don't
So
think,
in that
I don't
sense,
think it's, Yaneve, I don't think it's going to be analytical to say that harming other people.
No, yeah. It's not going to, I'm saying he's either going to make the mistake that I think it sounds like he's either making the mistake that he's almost treating it as if it's analytically true when it's not, or, you know, or he's going to have to make the claim that, you know, I mean, I just don't see what other path you have, right? Unless, so, I mean, unless you have a justification to tell me why harming someone is, inherently has, we have a function of reason to say that that's not.
It's its own reason. So the fact that that some act would cause some other sentient being unnecessary harm. I mean, that's that right there is the reason itself.
Why? The fact that someone would cause someone to eat chocolate is the reason itself.
Reasons to care about harm.
No, but
Because so harm, that would be the necessary truth.
So
we all have reasons to care about harm. We have
reasons to care about harm for ourselves, not necessarily for other people.
No, so we have self-interested reasons to care about our own harm, but we have impartial reasons to care about the harm of other people.
Right. What's the argument for that?
So I'd have to go. So you'd have to first examine egoism as a theory itself.
No, you must have, if you think that claim is correct, you must have.
Because everything really relies on that claim, meaning otherwise it's just a house of cards, right? So everything lies on that claim, right? That's where the crux of the difference is. You think that we could say that there's, not based on attitude. Remember, you have to show us that it's not based on attitudes and reactions, that there's an impulse. I'm sorry?
Attitudes and responses.
So I don't have to just show that. No. Maybe
I wasn't even done with it.
We have two different theories. We have objective theories and we have subjective theories. So if we can show that subjective theories have implausible implications.
Let's not get off track, right?
Yeah, this seems.
Presumably,
I think
we're not off track because you're making a very specific.
Look, this is to both our benefits. Ben, this is to both our benefits. We found the crux of the difference between our two views. If we could solve that problem, you should either be able to convince us or we should be able to confuse you. Muddying it up with other areas is not going to make progress for us.
Yeah, let's just clarify exactly.
So no one's muddying anything up. So
let's just state the question that we're asking, right? So you're saying that there is an external normative reason, right, to care about the harming others, like causing unnecessary pain to others, right? Now, we understand that that's not something, on your view, that's not something that's made true by attitudes and responses of subjects, right? But you're also agreeing that there's no contradiction entailed by somebody denying that it's wrong, right, to harm others.
I don't know what you mean by that. So you're just saying that I agree with that or that I think that, and I'm not sure what you mean by that.
You think it does entail a contradiction?
I think it entails something contrary to reason.
Yes.
Do you think it entails a contradiction?
It's like if I didn't accept the conclusion of the valid argument with true premises, I've done something irrational. I've done something contrary to reason.
Show us how that's the case. That's what we're asking.
Right. So
we found a substantive disagreement between us. Show us how that's the case.
That's what I'm saying. So if you do accept that we all have reasons to accept the conclusion of that valid argument with true premises, then you believe that there are irreducible.
Let's accept that there's claims of that nature. We're asking you to show us that this claim is of that nature.
Yeah.
Which claim?
The claim.
That. Sorry, go on, Jack.
The claim that harming other people without some further justification is wrong. So harming people for their own sake, for its own sake, is wrong.
Not in virtue of attitudes or responses.
So then I'd have to. So now we're moving away from meta ethics and we're moving into normative ethics.
Sure.
So I would say that
call this category, I think it's
moral claims.
Show us that claim is a truth of reason and not
because we could then say we could then put forward the moral. We have to put forward moral principles, and so. One of the ones that I find particularly compelling is the contractualist formula, where acts are wrong.
We're not asking you to argue.
Stop. You got to stop. So you got to let me. No, you gotta let me see.
No, but that's going to take us off track, right?
No, it's not. So you can't ask me questions and then expect me to just not answer them. Just not let.
You're
No, I'm
misunderstanding
not.
you're
Just
misunderstanding.
listen.
You're misunderstanding what we're at.
No, just listen for a second. You're being very rude.
We'll give you a second, but then if it sounds like a misunderstanding of the question, we should be able to give a second.
So on the contractualist formula, acts are wrong if they would be disallowed by any set of principles that no one could reasonably reject. The control and regulation of general behavior.
No, that's not arguing for a.
So you need to shut up now.
That's not arguing.
Hey, we gave you the chance to.
Because I'm not done. I'm not. You haven't even let me finish my thought.
But you see, you're arguing a kind of constructivism there, right? And we weren't interested in a constructivist argument.
It's not a constructivist argument. You don't even know what you're talking about.
I don't. Well, I don't
So
understand why.
there's a fact of the matter as to what principles people could reasonably reject.
When is the claim?
Now, there's also the rule consequentialist formula, where we should all follow the rules that would make things go best.
Josh is trying to say something. Go ahead, Josh.
When has it when has the claim that there exist moral principles been defended?
When I said that there was, that's what I'm trying to do right now by putting forward the contractualist formula. Those are moral principles. These are things you have to argue. You can't. The questions that you ask.
Maybe he's right.
The questions that you ask inevitably.
Ben, let's just get a clarification.
Framework. So,
Ben,
the question can't be
Can we just get a clarification that maybe we're wrong? Are you going to make the claim that for harming others to be objectively wrong, it depends on us accepting the contractual formula? Is that your claim?
It could be. If you
what does that
accept
mean?
the
So are you going to give us a
contractualist
definitive argument, or it might be? What's the other possibility?
What's the actual argument, not the possible argument? Right, that's what we're interested in. What's the actual argument?
So, I mean, there's been a lot of ink spilt over these sorts of questions, and these sorts of questions define some of the largest fault lines in moral philosophy.
We're not asking you that, right? You're making the claim, right, that
no, you're asking the question. You're asking a question. Why is causing
I wasn't finished
to someone else wrong, and that can't be answered unless you have a normative theory of wrongness that you're working with it.
I wasn't finished talking. Okay, so you're making the claim that harming people for fun, right? But there's an external normative reason to not harm people for fun, right?
Yes.
So that means that you're saying it's not a truth, it's not a subjective claim, like that chocolate ice cream is good, right? And nor is it a claim the denial of which entails a contradiction, right?
It entails something irrational. It does. So it will entail a contradiction if there are truths like you shouldn't cause unnecessary pain to another sentient being for fun.
So
if that claim is true, yes, it does entail a contradiction.
So you are saying it entails a contradiction?
Well,
yes.
Hold on a sec. There's something wrong with that. A person could be completely rational in having a false belief, right? That doesn't entail.
Listen to what you just said. Someone can be completely rational in believing something false. No.
Yeah.
No.
I don't see why that wouldn't be true, right? They could have a
perfectly rational in believing something false.
I don't see why that would be the case when we just mean rational is just in accord with a series of inference rules, right? So reasons.
No, that's not. That's. We don't just mean merely procedurally rational. We mean substantively rational, meaning that they know all the relics and that they've been procedurally rational. So no. If
Wait.
people have false
If
beliefs,
someone
they believe
if
something
someone
contradictory.
believes, let's assume for the sake of argument.
We weren't
Let's assume for
talking
the
about.
sake of argument. Hold on a sec. Let's assume for the sake of argument that there's logical privacy of mental states, and I believe other agents have mentality, right? But that's actually a false belief. It's not actually the case that there are other, right? They're all P zombies, for example. You want to say that a person who believes that is irrational?
Yeah, because other people do have. It is the case that other people do have those things.
So you don't think
I'm
there's a
not-
distinction between being irrational and being ignorant of a worldly fact?
I do think there is a distinction there. I wouldn't make that argument. People
You're
can be
saying
genuinely
that- you're saying-
ignorant of something, but
No, but you
but
said
someone
the
cannot
reason
rationally believe something.
Wait, but you said the reason why the belief was irrational was because it's false, right? So that seems to rule out.
No, because first off, rationality depends on our beliefs.
What difference? How is that contradicting anything that I said? You said
Okay,
the reason why the person was irrational was because the belief was false, right? But if that were the criterion, then that means that one could not be rationally ignorant, right?
no.
So then it's possible.
Hello?
Is that
Say it again. Repeat the last sentence, Jack. You cut
it's
out.
possible to believe something that's false and still be rational to do so?
So give me an example.
What? What? Why do you need an example?
I can give an example.
Because I don't know if I understand your meaning.
Wouldn't
Yeah,
get your
sure.
cases work?
Well, I asked if a person was irrational if people are P zombies and they believe that other
Well,
people
a broken
have
clock.
mentality.
A broken clock might be a clearer example, as Shamos suggested, right? So yeah, if you didn't have any good reason to think that your clock was broken, right, and
An external reason?
well, so
An external reason to believe that your clock is broken.
but you see, if you're understanding external reasons in the way that I think you are, it sounds like you're saying that it's not possible for anybody to rationally believe something that's false. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think I understood what you just said.
Do you think it's possible for somebody to be rational in believing a false proposition?
Give me an example.
Just give him a common Gettier example and then ask him if he thinks it's rational to believe that.
Well, but see, the thing is, he asked whether one has an external reason to believe that one's
So
clock.
there's a reason. There's reasons and there's apparent reasons. So if I believe something that's an apparent reason and that reason doesn't turn, it'd be the sense of, it would be rational in the sense that if this belief were true, the reasons.
I'm not understanding why this is so difficult. So, do you think that one can be ignorant one can be ignorant of some set of facts, right? And which will entail certain false beliefs, right? And for that person to nonetheless be rational in having those beliefs.
Sure.
Okay, so that's what we thought you were denying at the outset. So you're not actually denying that one could be rational and believe a false proposition.
Okay.
Okay, so we've cleared that up, Josh. But now, so getting back to the original question.
Well, he wanted to claim that there was something irrational about people denying moral beliefs.
Right.
Yes.
And so I was asking, in virtue of what would they be irrational, even assuming for that there are moral facts, right? Why would the person be irrational in a specific moral fact?
Because they would be denying something that they had most reason to believe, something that was true.
I'm asking what
So-
reasons they have to believe it when they have it. I'm not asking for a definition of rationality.
What are you asking?
It's the same question we are asking before, meaning like, so you're making this claim, you're giving us an example, right? That harm to others would be irrational to desire harm to others, independent, I assume, of our attitudes and responses. And we'd like to understand, in virtue of what that's the case, is that the case? Like, show us the logic, show us how we're being irrational.
So because if it's true, if it's the necessary truth that it's wrong to harm other people for fun. If you in fact,
we're asking to show us how it's necessarily true. Look, okay, look, so it is
how it's necessarily true.
Look, it just is necessarily true that chocolate is better than vanilla. Therefore, you're logically wrong to believe that vanilla is better. Than chocolate.
You could say that, but it sounds stupid.
Exactly.
Is that all that you have?
I'm glad. So is that all? Is that all of this is going to come down to? That you're going to assert claims of logical truth? Just this. Yes, I'm going to say this is true, and that's the only justification.
Yeah, just like it's logically true that you have decisive reasons to accept the conclusion of valid arguments with true premises. Do you deny that?
I think you're trying
to
deny
that
conversation right now. Look. Is there any other type of logical claim where
you deny that?
I'm not going to. For me to answer that, I would have to parse out what you're saying, which I think would take us on a.
Exactly. So you would be irrational if you denied it.
Look, I would have to understand it better, and I don't think it's worth it because I think we can agree on something.
It's detrimental to what you're trying to say.
I think we
know that I'm right.
I think we could both make progress in our
that I'm right
without going down that path. This is not some kindergarten game.
Okay, well, because you're trying to dismiss a point that I've made decisively.
We're just asking.
We're not asking if there's logical truths. We're asking how do we know something to be a logical truth?
I'm not saying I gave you an irreducibly normative truth that you have most reason.
What we're asking you
is there a contradiction? Believing.
Yeah, but we're asking you if there's anything more to the claim, right? That harming people for fun is wrong, right? Or causing pain to other people for fun is wrong, other than that it sounds plausible to you, whereas saying
is there an argument? Really what we're asking.
So at that point, that's where you take something as axiomatic. You would appeal to rational.
You don't have an argument, so you should have just said that from the beginning instead of wasting all this time. Just say, I don't have an argument. I believe this is the case.
That is an argument. Rational intuition.
No, an axiom is not an argument. I don't think anyone thinks that an axiom is an argument.
Everyone thinks that. You think that. Do you believe that there's an external world? Do you believe that your memory experiences are reliable?
Okay, look.
Missions, do you think that you have mathematical knowledge? How about modal?
What we're asking for is something more than the assertion that something seems plausible, right? We're asking if there's something other.
So an argument. So do you accept arguments because they seem valid?
But you said you didn't have an argument.
Do you accept arguments because they seem valid and they seem to have
premise? Confused about whether he has an argument or not.
No, you're confused about the role of rational intuition in our own epistemology.
Okay, so you have an intuition.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so whether you want to call it an argument or rational, but the point is it's something similar to just a mere intuition on your part, right?
Well, so it's just a mere intuition that there are other minds. It's just a mere intuition that there are mathematical facts.
Look, I mean, I just not waste time. Let's say let's give you, to make you happy, that mere intuition is a great thing. It's enough to justify everything in our world. But that's all it is, right? I mean, you don't have some other substantiative way to show someone who has a different intuition that their intuition is wrong. Am I correct on that? You see, if you said to me 1 + 1 = 15, I might have some methodology of making progress with you.
By appealing to other intuitions.
Okay, so what other intuition would you appeal to?
There is. What do you mean other intuitions that I would appeal to?
But Yaneve, I think this is getting off track. Right?
Intuitions that things like happiness is good, that pain is bad, that freedom is good.
Well, look, I mean, I think he doesn't have There's nothing
That
to
we
discuss.
all have reason to care
Yeah,
about
there's-
agony.
There's nothing to discuss. This isn't really like a complex moral.
Yeah, but you see,
Well,
There's
think
plenty
that
to
there's a
discuss.
way-
There's entire books. There's, Harvard professors
I'm talking
and
about.
Oxford professors who write on this
I'm talking about specifically.
professionally, and these are what professional philosophers put
Yeah,
forward.
and we've
you
talked-
don't understand
we've talked
anything
to-
about it, but you think
Look,
that you've got
look,
all
we've
the
talked-
answers, and
We've
you're
talked
so
to some
confident.
but we've talked to some moral realists, some of them professors that are world renowned, and they
No, you
usually
haven't.
more of what we would call an argument.
No,
That's-
you haven't. You haven't
Okay.
talked to any of those kind of people. You're a
I
liar.
talked to
I guess you're basically.
You didn't talk to Parfit.
Wait, no. He has an argument based on intuition, Jack. He has an argument based on intuition that we haven't. We don't really need to get into it. He has intuition that we haven't, and so therefore we haven't. And he has an intuition. Moral realism is
Yaniv,
true.
see,
This is nonsense.
I think what you're doing, Yaniv, is you've established
Liar.
that
You haven't talked to, name the professor that you talked to about moral realism.
We
Perfect.
told you.
You're
we
a
talked
liar.
to
He's
Derek
dead.
Parfit. We talked to him
You're a
before
liar.
he died.
He's dead.
We talked to him before he died.
I'm done with this.
Well, what's the point, Jack? What's the point of?
I'm done.
What's
All
the
right,
point?
so-
Come on.
So I think the point that I was trying to get at, though, is that what you were able to do was establish that he can't actually defend
Yeah, it's just he has an
any moral
intuition.
proposition other than to claim that
Yeah,
there's an
there's no-
intuition behind it. But see, I think what we've developed are a couple of stronger arguments to show that there couldn't really be properties of that kind.